Hi everyone, it's Neve here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today I finally finished the Inktober challenge that I've been undertaking for the last, 31 days, but I've kind of completed it a little bit quicker. The challenge I chose to do this year is the James Luke Burke Creative Challenge, which is an interactive children's book, all to do with the character of Daisy. And so I thought I'd take you through, do a flip through of what I've done, and also take you through some of the materials I've been using. So this is basically the kit I've been using consistently throughout the whole process. I've got my heat gun, which is great for drying off pieces as you go. The ink I've been using is the Liquid Spectrum Black Concentrated Art ink. And I actually managed to finish it today, so it lasted me for the whole thing. It was half full already, but I managed to keep it going. My palette, this is how I've set up my palette. I have pure ink in the top well here, and going from most concentrated to basically just ink water down the end, so levels of ink. Now they all look fairly much the same when they're in here, and you'll notice when I go through my journal that I sort of test them out as I go along to see what the strength is. The three main brushes I've been using, these two are brushes from IKEA, really cheap, but they've been fantastic. Because I've got small hands, I really like small brushes. They just fit my hands much better than other brushes. I've also got one of the Jane Davenport water brushes as well, and I haven't cleaned that one. Other thing I've been using a lot of is paper towel. For a lot of my sketching, I was using the Stabilo oil pencil. This is a water activated pencil, so I could sketch it out really, really lightly and then spritz it with water and dissolve the lines so that you didn't see my sketch lines anymore. I've been using Posca paint pen. This is a 0.7 and it's got a really fine tip on it. This is the pen I've found to replace my Sharpie fine tip pen, and this has been working really, really well. For the beginning of my project, I was using this pen a lot. It's a fountain pen with a really fine line, and it's got a waterproof carbon ink in it, so you get that really fine line in it. As I progressed through the project, I started to expand my kit slightly more. I ended up getting some of these Artline drawing system pens. They go from very fine right through to quite thick. They're also waterproof, so once you put them down, dry them off a little bit, just leave them to set for a while, and then you can put water over the top of them and they won't reactivate. Also, in the last few days, I ended up with these two pens again from Jane Davenport, which are also waterproof inks. So they give you some nice brush stroke lines. They tend to be a little bit darker and heavier. It's like using pure ink on your page, so just be aware that you are going to get very dark lines with these ones. I've been using masking tape, just painter's tape, to mask off my pages just to get nice crisp border every time. If I did some splattering, I used this fan brush just to splatter on the page. Salt. Don't usually have it sitting on my desk, but again, to do some techniques of pulling up my ink, I'd put some salt on it. If I did some stamping in the background, I'd use either a VersaFine. I usually use the VersaFine pad. I occasionally use the archival ink pad, but I found that was a very blue-black, and this one's a more true black that I enjoy using. You just need to be aware to dry this off completely because it will stay damp for a little bit longer. If I did do stamping, I tried to use stamps that I knew there are copyright issues with. I know these copyright issues because these are stamps that I've actually designed and made. So, and I've got a few other sets of them. So most of the stamps that I've used, if I've used them on the page for backgrounds and so on, are ones that I've designed. And the substrate that I worked in was the Jane Davenport Large Journal. And I found that was really, it was a good size. It gave me great papers, and I liked the textures on them. I really liked working on the smooth sides rather than the textured, but both had their charm when you're doing your different pieces. So just move this out of the way. I've already spilt my ink once today, so that was really good. So this was my very first attempt at drawing Daisy. Once James came up with the prompt list, which is this one, he also put up a video showing how to draw his character Daisy. And I had a go at it and I had a bit of a play with it, and I thought, oh, okay, I can maybe do this. So this is my actual first ever go with using ink to draw with. And I was really happy with how she turned out. So you can see me practicing some of the characters, and I thought, oh, okay, I can see where this is going. So I decided with the prompts list, you can sort of see where I've highlighted some of them, that I was only going to do a few. I thought, well, try the ones that you think you can do and see how you go. And as I got further on with the prompts list, I became more confident with what I was doing, or at least more willing to have a go and have an experiment. So I'll take you through it. This is the first page, and this one was a leaf looked at me in a weird way yesterday in my garden hideaway. A mushroom queen gave me spots, lots and lots of beautiful dots. I got burgled by my cat. He stole my big bat hat. So you can see, starting to practice with different techniques and different things in the background. You'll see the daisies change. I started doing them all kind of the same. The one thing that I've tried to keep as consistent as possible with my daisy is that she's got the spots around her glasses, and usually she's wearing this shape dress, but that does change occasionally. Over here on this side, you'll see where I've been testing out the inks and looking at the different things. This one is a strange house in a blouse living in my 50s doll's house. So with this one, I was experimenting using stencils and seeing if that would work on top of the ink. So once I'd done my background, it was looking a bit plain, so I wanted to put in some texture, so I used some stencils over the top and just using the VersaFine or archival ink to stencil through that. This one is the ribbons on my mittens actually belong to my kittens. And again, just putting a bit of stenciling in the background to fill in the background. This is one of my favourite pages, I think. I love how it turned out. And again, this is some stamping in the background, then going back over it with the fine line, the fountain pen, just to give that sketchy line over the top and putting in some extra details. This one is, you know, a crown can be a gown if you wear it upside down. And then I started jumping around the prompts list and not doing it in order. So this one was, the ghost of my teapot sprouted antlers, and so did most of my small hanging planters. Now this one used a lot of influence from Little Raven ink, with particularly her ghost shape and her antlers. And I really had fun with that. I really loved how I did the planters, just using that really loose sketchy line, and you'll see this come up in the next few. When I start to draw flowers, I tend to draw them in the same way now. So here again, I was practicing with the different ink strengths. With this brush in particular, it was really good when it was loaded to make sort of those leafy patterns. So I found that a really handy tool to have. This one was, I met a fun flower shower. Let's try that again. I met a fun shower flower during my morning exploring hour. So I did this the weekend in our local, I was going to say city, it's not a city, a town. We have a tulip festival. So the town was covered in tulips, so I had to draw tulips for this one. This one is, today I'm a temporary Frankenfairy trimming sky-high topiary. I'm not really into Halloween, I have to say, but I actually quite enjoyed this. I'm not happy with sort of the side profile of her, but it worked okay. But I was really happy with how my topiary turned out. And again, in the background, I don't know if you can notice with the texture, but that's a salt drop background. So putting down a wash of water and then sprinkling salt over it sort of gives you that starbursty effect in the background. This was, the man in the moon still asleep on a heap of exhausted fox sheep. So again, on this side, I used it sort of as a practice go of how it would work. I was really happy with how this moon turned out, not so happy with this one, but I loved how my foxes turned out. And again, on this page, I really enjoyed the texture of going back in with the Stabilo oil pencil afterwards and putting some pencil marks on. Just gave a little bit more depth to what I was doing. So I started from this one on, putting a little more pencil shading into what I was working on. This is probably my least favourite piece of all of them. There was one disaster after another with it. I'm eating clouds for lunch. I love how they crunch. So while it's very clean, I used masking tape to mask off the clouds, and I put the masking tape down and cut into it. The problem with that was it actually cut the paper as well, or marked into the paper, and gave an area for the ink to bleed through. I don't actually mind how it's sort of gone past the border on this one, but I did have a problem here on the face where I dropped some ink and I tried to cover it up and it didn't work, and then I rubbed something off and it didn't quite work here, and yeah, it is what it is. A bit different, but it's okay. Here's another page using the oil pencil just to put in some shading, and I really liked how this turned out. This one was, I'm not interested in eyebrows anymore ever since these shells washed ashore. I didn't want to actually put shells on her eyebrows because I wasn't confident with drawing shells, and certainly not drawing them small enough to get the amount of detail I wanted in it. So I decided to draw the shells big in the background and instead give her a little magazine about eyebrow style guides. I really like how her dress turned out, which was actually, it's a bit hard to see sort of looking at it, but they're actually sort of shell shapes in the background. So I like sort of how it referenced both in this one. This one was, I made some twinkling stars to hang off a patchwork unicorn floating boomerang. I had no idea where to go with this one. I could not work out how to do a floating boomerang without making it look ridiculous. I really enjoyed how it looked though in the end. I did use one of James Lukeberg's unicorns as a reference, particularly with the ribbon tail. And I like how I didn't have Daisy facing front on, and that was something different. So I've used that technique a few times because she didn't have to always be facing front on. I realised when I was doing this, it was starting to look a little bit boring with her always facing the front. So giving her a different perspective was good, and making the unicorn the focus of the whole piece. This one was, I stacked a bunch of teacups high to try and catch that butterfly spy. So I really loved this one. I've had a lot of comments on my teacups, which is just lovely because I wasn't confident drawing them. For this one, I did have a butterfly stamp that I wanted to use as a reference. So I stamped it out and then proceeded to sort of draw and adapt it over on the other side. And I like the scale of how it worked, sort of having the bigger teacups and going down to the smaller Daisy. Doesn't necessarily represent a spy, but I suppose he's spying on her and she's trying to catch it. Down the bottom, I was really pleased with how this texture came up, and that's just straight from the paper towel. So my paper towel has this ridging on it, and by sponging it off, it managed to give me sort of this texture, which ended up looking a bit like a tablecloth. This one is, I'm only wearing Pretty Petals today for my World Wild debut in my ballet bouquet. So again, using that spotlight, masking it off, drawing in the curtains to give a bit of an effect. And again, using a stamp as a reference to draw what I was going to do for the skirt. I found having a reference gave me a lot more confidence with my drawing and with what I was going to do with it. I didn't need it all the time, but sometimes it just gave me that little bit of an extra boost to keep going with it and think that it was okay in the end. This one was, I traded my spectacles for tentacles. So I thought she had to be underwater and made Daisy a mermaid for the day. So she's got the tentacles on the octopus. I'm not sure about the amount of hair she's got, but it sort of looks flowy. So it worked okay in the end, I think. This one was something about, if I think too long every day, my cranium critters fly away. So this one was a bit more loose. I put down lots of water in the background and let the ink just flow, and then used the ink drops to make the cranium critters. And within the critters, because I tend to art journal anyway, I actually decided I was going to journal on this. So there's lots of journaling about my fears, my hopes, and lots of random stuff written in script that's hopefully illegible, and then drawing the faces underneath. So, you know, the grumpier faces are probably the more negative emotions, the happier faces are happier emotions. They've all got those antlers because, again, they're sort of referenced from the Little Raven Ink, Courtney Diaz type style. I really was happy with how my Daisy turned out. I used the Jane Davenport Whimsical Girls colouring book as a reference to draw that, because again, I'm not great at figure drawing, and I'd sort of got into the habit of drawing Daisy in a particular way, and I wanted to break out of that and try and draw her in some different poses and different styles. So this one is, I decorated my big bow sailboat with leafy vine, starry twine, and a funny Google search quote. Some of the quotes are prompts. When you went back to them, I sort of do them and then forget a little bit of it and think, oh, can I add that in or not? So for example, on this one, I forgot the leafy twine, so I put the leafy twine into the bow, and I was able to put the stars over the top. And my quote is, I like big boats and I cannot lie. I was really happy with how my boat turned out, not necessarily as happy with the ocean, but it worked out okay, and I don't know what I was doing with the rudder there. This one is another favourite piece that I was really struggling with, because I had no idea how to draw cranes, and then I saw James do his piece and he made origami cranes, and I just adored it. And so I had to look up how to draw origami cranes. I really liked the shape of the teacup and how it worked out, and I was really actually happy with how the milky tea looked. I coloured it beforehand and put some trails down, and it looked really stark, and I hated it. So I went back in with a thicker Sharpie paint pen and covered over it. And by doing that, and then just putting a little bit of Stabilo oil pencil over marks I'd already made, it just made it look really smoky and smooth, and covered over a whole multitude of sins. The other thing I was really happy about was how I managed to do the background. It was just a fluke, I think, with flooding the background with ink and letting it dry a little bit, and then putting a darker bit around it, so it gave it a sort of framed effect and sort of put Daisy right in the center. With this, I did use some eye stamps to do the eyes and to try and mirror it and draw it again, just for something different, and just to get a little bit more perspective and scale into what I was doing. This one was, I think these whiskers really suit my face, but I'm unsure about all this extra lace. As I was doing this, one of my daughter's favourite things to do is, when she FaceTimes her dad, is to put all the different face filters on, and she loves the little mousy whiskery one. So I decided that that was what we were going to do. We were going to go into the 21st century, and Daisy was doing a selfie or putting a filter on her face. So trying to draw a phone and trying to get that into scale with the hand as well was an interesting challenge. And then I realized I hadn't put lace on, so I decided to put a lacy background in. This is probably one of my least favorite ones. Just doesn't appeal to me, I don't think. This one is Cherry Blossom Monkey Dolls Help Me Mind My Neighbour's Trolls. I didn't know how to draw the monkeys. I didn't know how to draw the trolls, and I wasn't sure what was going on. So I do have a sock monkey, so I decided to use that to draw my monkeys, and they're hanging upside down, hanging from the trees. My mum is a quilter and a sewer, and she had a pattern for these trolls, which are called Nisi trolls, I think. They're Scandinavian sort of folk trolls, which I quite liked because all you can see is their nose and their beards. So it was a very simplified shape to draw, but it's very busy. There's a lot going on with it, and it's got room for improvement, I think. However, this one I fell in love with. This one is, I'm taking out my Parisian poodle for haircuts, high tea, and Japanese noodles. I really liked how this turned out. This again is referenced from the Jane Davenport Whimsical Girls book. You can see I've screwed up the proportions somewhat in her face. I like how my poodle turned out, and it's a bit of a juxtaposition sort of between a more realistic drawing and sort of something cartoony down the bottom. The thing that I'm most happy about this page though is my background, and I really enjoyed drawing that in, and this is where I started using these fine liners, and I found that gave me a lot more freedom in what I was doing. While I really enjoy using this fountain pen, because of the long length of it as well, I sometimes found it a little bit unwieldy. So having something shorter fitted in my hand a little bit better. I had the choice of pen widths as well to play with. I just found that much easier to work with. I actually really liked it without the ink in the background, but I'm glad I put the ink in. It sort of helped blend the piece together. I think it would have looked too plain if I hadn't inked in the background. One of my favourite things about this whole page though is actually the lettering in the background. I was really happy with how that came out. So this next page I really wasn't sure with what I was doing as well. This one is my cherub friend Charlotte is made of cool stuff, cotton, glitter and fairy floss fluff. Now I wasn't sure how to do glitter, I wasn't sure how to draw fairy floss. It was just a lot of I'm not sure, so just go for it. So over here you can see me sort of sketching out some references. I stamped out some eyes so I could sort of get some reference of how I was going to draw them. To try and get a glittery effect in her dress, I inked it up, used pure ink, and then put the salt over the top to sort of get that speckled effect. Using the Stabilo oil pencil to try and put in some texture and fluffiness in here. And then I just thought, not sure, and I just put stars over the background. So that was my glitter. So that one was a tough one to complete, and I know a few other people struggled with that one, so that made me a bit happier. Because I had so much fun drawing the cityscape in the last one, I wanted to have another go at doing something like this. So this is the very last prompt, which is Dad told me we're moving soon, maybe even this afternoon. I hope to come back and visit here. Our chats have been the best part of my year. We've got Daisy and her dad driving off into the distance, and this is the background. This cityscape background is inspired by a picture book author called Colin Thompson, who's an Australian author. And he has a whole series of books, The Last Alchemist, Paper Bag Prince, The Tower to the Sun is the other one, and he draws just these amazingly detailed backgrounds, lots of stuff going in. One of the things he does is likes to hide different bits and pieces in, which I was considering for a moment that I might have a mushroom popping up somewhere and a cat somewhere else, because the reason I drew this was Daisy has such a fantastical imagination that I thought maybe she just takes random bits from her city life and makes these stories up. So, you know, she saw a mushroom in the sidewalk, so it's a mushroom queen giving her spots. She saw a black cat walking by, so it's stealing something from her. But because of the scale of what I was doing, I thought that's going to make it too busy and it's going to be too tiny and you'd miss it. So if I ever did something like this again in the future, I might go that direction. but I was really happy with how this turned out, apart from Dad, but he's not really a central character, so that's okay. This piece was, I've started making gourmet cakes with bubbles, peonies and fancy fruit flakes. So this is getting my baking on and drawing in my background. She looks very unhappy. I don't think she is. I think she's just stunned by someone taking a picture of her. So I was really happy with how the flowers turned out in this one, because again, I wasn't sure how to draw peonies. I'm not sure if I put fruit flakes in, but I've got the bubbles on her dress and on her on the cake. I was really happy with how my windows turned out though, or I'm not sure if they're windows or cupboard doors. So I didn't actually put any handles on them, because I thought they could be a bit, you know, either or. This one was, I wrote a small book for my ladybug friends with oversized feathered fine fountain pens. So I like the scale of the daisy I did a few turns ago, like this. I did actually want to draw a different perspective on my daisy, but I just could not work out how to get Daisy in the table to the right perspective, and it was really doing my head in. So I tried lots of different sketches. I was quite liking this one, but it just didn't quite work when I went to draw it out. So I drew this out and it was looking really flat, and her face still looks a bit flat to me. So I decided to put some spots in the background, and unfortunately I dropped my stamp, and that's really bugging me. So at some stage I think I might cut this out and stick it on a background again, just to fix it up, because I quite liked how it turned out in the end, but that bit really bugs me. I suppose it's all about ladybugs, so that's okay. This piece was the Midnight Sprite came back last night and helped you make this King Kitty kite. So again, this is referenced from Little Raven Ink, Courtney Diaz type style. She sort of does these monsters. Again, the antlers I really liked. I didn't know what a Midnight Sprite was, so it kind of made me think of the Wild Things, which is why I put them in these sort of onesies, and had the kites being made. This one is, so I'm just trying to find it here. You know those tiny bunny birds from my pumpkin patch had mini eggs and they're ready to hatch. Now this is referenced from a piece that a video that James Burke did for Easter, looking at his Swatch dolls and drawing sort of an Easter twist on them, where he made Easter eggs and then put bunny ears on them and showed you how to draw the bunny ears and how to draw the hat. I did one of those at Easter, which I really enjoyed, so I thought I'd use that inspiration for this piece as well. I really like how it turned out, but I didn't get my greys or my toning right down here, so everything's a little bit dark, which is why I went over with the oil pencils to put a bit more shading on, and everything's a bit light up the top. So I'm not sure how to remedy that, but it was late at night and I wasn't sure, so I decided I'd just leave it and think about it for a while, but I still haven't come up with a good solution for it. This was all my school teachers are odd looking creatures with floral, feline and fairy-like features. Again, I wasn't sure how to do this one, and they didn't end up looking odd, but I liked how it turned out. And this one, you can see the effect of using the thicker pen to do the hair, which I really enjoyed using. Again, this is sort of referenced from a group of girls in the Whimsical Girls Jane Davenport book. I found just having that sit to the side and then sketching it out just gave me a bit more confidence with what I was doing. So I've got my feline teacher, my fairy teacher and my floral teacher here. In the wings, I've again used salt to give that sort of speckledy effect. And then I suddenly thought, oh, how am I going to put Daisy in this? So again, putting Daisy back on so it looks like she's talking to or pointing at her teachers. This piece was, I'm opening a toy shop for my handmade creations, hand sewn marionette pixie crustaceans. As you can see, I left the tougher ones to the end, which was a bit of a challenge, but I figured I'd got this far, I was just going to have a go, and if it didn't work, it didn't work. So Daisy's a bit happy to be opening her shop. She's got a handmade, hand-stitched crab marionette, and I used the idea from the cake one as of the window in her shop, because I wasn't sure how to portray that she's in a shop without drawing lots and lots of stock, and I didn't fancy drawing lots and lots of crabs or lobsters on the shelves. So I decided that I'd have the now open in the background. I am quite impressed with myself though that I managed to reverse the letters so it looks like she's inside her shop and that's the outside, because my usual train of thought would be to not do that. And this is the very final one that I did. And again, I love it. I was really happy with it. And then I went back and read the prompt and went, oh no, I forgot that. So this one is, the skirt's a shirt, the mop's a top, but I think I'm most pleased with my faux geese headpiece. So I did my shirt skirt and I did my faux geese, which I was really happy about. And I thought, oh yeah, they look good. She's walking down a catwalk. Got to the end and it's like, right, where's the mop? So I decided to go back in with my fine pen and make her hair look like it was a mop. So it's a little bit subtle in my reference, but that's how it ended up. So I hope you enjoyed this flip through of my Inktober. It was a really fun challenge. I think the reason I took on this challenge was the fact that it appealed to the teacher in me, and that James was using this as a collaborative picture book. I'm really excited now to put the pieces that I've created into a book for my friends and family, particularly for my daughters, who I've been showing this as we go along, and they've got a bit excited about it. So I'm really looking forward to that being finished. So once I get that done, I will show you how it ended up looking. Thank you so much for listening to me waffle on about this. Thank you so much if you've been on Instagram or my Facebook page, liking or putting comments. I've really appreciated it, and it's certainly kept me going through this challenge. So until next time, bye.